Tip number 3. This one is probably something more people are familiar with, but it's reflection. So really reflecting on the reflections of your room. There's some easy things to avoid and easy things to fix. So if you have a television in between your speakers, and it's funny, I just saw a video last night where Steve Guttenberg was talking to a guy about putting a TV between your speakers. That is sonically one of the worst things you can do. Now, if you have a theater system, it is what it is. But if you're talking about a 2-channel audio setup, putting a TV between them, or putting even your HiFi itself, the equipment and the equipment rack between your speakers, sonically is terrible. It might look cool, but all the reflections off the face plates, off the rack, if you have a turntable especially, it's going to get loaded up with all the bass frequencies being so close to the speakers. It's not good for soundstage, for depth, for imaging. So trying to keep that equipment, try to keep your speakers with nothing between them. And on that note, try not to have anything between you and your speakers. So, look, a coffee table in the living room, again, it might be a necessity, but when we're talking about sound quality, if you have a coffee table, it's one of the worst things you can do for the sound quality of your 2-channel setup. So either, if you can't move these things, either cover them. If you're like me, I can't really listen to the main hi-fi in my house until like 9 o'clock at night. Once the kids are in bed, everything is settled down. I'll throw a blanket over the coffee table or over the television even. And you will notice that there's a quietness to the sound. There's more direct information and more spacious sound. Reflections are easy to deal with. If you just put a little bit of thought into it. You don't need to buy Sonex treatment or anything like that. Just use things around your house. Plants are great. There's a reason we use plants at trade shows. It's not because we're going for a jungle theme. It's to help use them as diffusers for reflections. So just household items you already have, or just by moving things around a bit, you can generally get better sound.
What about like a soft ottoman? Somebody asked a question about that. Would that work?
Bigger plush furniture can be tricky. And, there's been times where certain couches or chairs, if you move those around, you will hear a big difference. But without knowing specifically or being in the room, there's too many variables to come up with a rule of thumb there.
Good little question, kind of back to one of your points. Is there a way to lessen the bad effects of having a TV between your speakers? And I think you mentioned that. You actually put like a
I just put like a blanket, man.
Blanket, like just a little throw rug, not a throw rug, but
but just like a nice blanket, that you have on the couch anyway. Yeah, just soften up that reflective surface. It's just like with windows in your house, having those like open cell drapes helps. Sure. You don't want to over dampen your room, kind of getting back to the reflections. One thing we used to do at trade shows especially is get that big, thick black velvet pipe and drape and just kind of black out the room. But the sound would get so dead by over dampening the room. So you can go too far. There can be too much of a good thing when we're talking about reflections.
For that TV question, would you say it's preferred to absorb the sound rather than to allow it to reflect, maybe?
Yeah, I think in the case of that, especially when you have the plane behind the speakers, in my experience, an absorber works best there. But look, room acoustics, you ask 1,000 experts, you get 1,000 different opinions. That's probably one of the most frustrating things about the subject to normal folks of, well, how do I get what I want to do without spending a ton of money? Sure. And that's why I suggest start with household items like bookcases, plants, blankets, things like that. Yeah. Start with what you got, and you'll notice the pros and cons of each approach that you take.
Very cool.